The Zarkonians prided themselves on their efficiency. They were the self-proclaimed enforcers of galactic order, a species that considered themselves superior to all others. When their patrol found an old human wandering a derelict station in the middle of contested space, they didn't think twice before detaining him. John Fletcher, a frail-looking man with a hunched back and a shock of gray hair, stood calmly as the Zarkonians shackled his wrists. His lined face betrayed no fear, just a faint smile that seemed to irritate his captors. "Identification," barked the Zarkonian commander, General Vrax, towering over John with his angular frame and glinting carapace armor. "John Fletcher." "Earth," the old man replied with an almost cheerful tone. His voice carried a calm that felt out of place under the circumstances. Vrax's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Earth? The primitive rock? You humans shouldn't even be out here. This station is under Zarkonian jurisdiction." John shrugged. "Didn't see a sign." The younger Zarkonian guards snickered, but Vrax silenced them with a sharp glare. He leaned closer to John, his eyes narrowing. "What business does a human have in Zarkonian space?" "Oh, John said, as if discussing the weather. "Just sightseeing. The view's lovely this time of year." The commander's patience wore thin. "Humans are prohibited from entering this sector. You're coming with us for interrogation. Resistance will only make things worse." "Worse for me or worse for you?" John asked, his tone light but his words cutting deep. The guards stiffened, unsure if the old human was joking or threatening them. Vrax decided not to humor the comment. He gestured sharply, and the guards dragged John toward their ship. As they marched him through the decrepit corridors of the station, John seemed unbothered, even amused. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Humans were supposed to be weak, docile creatures, but something about this one felt off. "Do you even know who you're arresting?" John asked casually, breaking the tense silence. Vrax snorted. "An insignificant old man who's trespassed where he doesn't belong." John chuckled softly. "You might regret making that assumption." His words lingered in the air, unsettling the youngest of the guards. Vrax dismissed it as empty bravado. What could an aging human possibly do to the might of the Zarkonian Empire? By the time they reached the ship, even Vrax had to admit there was something unnerving about the man's composure. Humans were supposed to panic, beg, or fight when faced with overwhelming odds. But this one walked as if he had nothing to fear. The docking bay doors closed behind them, sealing John inside the Zarkonian vessel. He looked around at the polished steel walls and rows of armed guards waiting to escort him deeper into the ship. "Well," John said with a faint grin, "this should be interesting." The interrogation room was a cold, sterile chamber filled with menacing devices that hummed faintly, their purpose clear to anyone who found themselves inside. John Fletcher sat calmly in the center of the room, his hands loosely cuffed to the chair. General Vrax loomed over him, flanked by a group of Zarkonian guards. "State your purpose for being in Zarkonian space," Vrax demanded. John tilted his head slightly, his expression betraying mild amusement. "I already told you, sightseeing. Lovely architecture on that station, though the upkeep could use some work." Vrax's mandibles twitched in irritation. He motioned toward one of the guards, who activated a holographic display filled with images of Earth. "Humans, a species of scavengers barely out of their own atmosphere. Your kind has no business here. Now, I'll ask again. Why were you on that station?" John leaned back as much as the restraints allowed, his tone unbothered. "It's funny, isn't it? You've traveled light years, built ships and weapons I can't even begin to pronounce. Yet here you are, afraid of a single old man." The room grew tense, the younger guards exchanging uneasy glances. Vrax slammed his clawed hand onto the table. "You are in no position to mock us, human. I have the authority to tear every secret from your primitive mind." John smirked. "By all means, give it a shot. But I should warn you, digging too deep can be hazardous." Ignoring the warning, Vrax gestured for the technician to initiate a neural scan. A device descended from the ceiling, its glowing tendrils reaching toward John's head. He didn't flinch as it made contact, but his voice carried a sharp edge. Careful now. You might find more than you bargained for. The machine hummed to life, projecting fragments of John's memories onto the holographic display. At first, the images were mundane. Glimpses of Earth, bustling cities, a quiet life. But then the scenes shifted. Explosions, alien ships in flames, shadowy figures moving with deadly precision. "Stop the scan," one of the guards shouted, but it was too late. The machine overloaded, sparks flying as it shut down abruptly. The room fell into stunned silence as the display lingered on one final image. A younger John Fletcher, standing atop the wreckage of a Zarkonian cruiser, his face cold and determined. Vrax stepped back, his confidence visibly shaken. Who are you?" John met his gaze, his voice calm but unyielding. "I told you, my name is John Fletcher. And you, General, have just made a very big mistake." The guards hesitated, unsure whether to restrain him further or run. Vrax's claws tapped nervously against the table. "Explain yourself." John leaned forward, his smile gone. "You really don't know, do you? Let me put it simply. I'm retired now, but I used to be part of a little organization called the Black Shield Division. I assume you've heard of it?" The room filled with an uneasy silence. The Black Shield Division was a name whispered in fear across the galaxy. A human unit that operated in the shadows, dismantling entire alien fleets with surgical precision. "Impossible," Vrax muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. "Believe what you want," John said, his tone icy. "But you might want to reconsider how you handle me, because if Earth finds out you've taken me, it won't end well for you. Or your empire." The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's systems. Vrax stared at John as if seeing him for the first time. The name, Black Shield Division, hung in the air like a specter, dragging a chill through the Zarkonian officers. "You're lying," Vrax said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. John chuckled lightly, leaning back against the restraints as if this were a casual conversation. "Am I? You just saw it yourself. Or were those battlefields and wrecked fleets just figments of my imagination?" The younger Zarkonian guards exchanged nervous glances. They had grown up on stories of the Black Shield Division, a legendary unit of humans whose tactics were as unorthodox as they were devastating. A division that operated in complete secrecy, feared by the most powerful empires in the galaxy. "You expect us to believe that a relic like you was part of that?" Vrax snapped, trying to regain control of the room. "I don't care what you believe," John replied, his voice calm, almost bored. "But if you're planning to test that theory, I'd suggest you think very carefully. The last time someone underestimated us, they lost 3 battlecruisers and an entire colony. And that was on a slow day." Vrax's mandibles clicked nervously. The guards were visibly uncomfortable now, their grips tightening on their weapons. One of them spoke up, his voice shaky. "General, if this human is telling the truth, detaining him could provoke retaliation." "The Earth Council," John interrupted with a dry laugh. "The Earth Council? Oh, they're the least of your worries. Black Shield doesn't answer to politicians. We don't negotiate. We don't make deals. We solve problems. Permanently." The weight of his words hung heavy in the room. Vrax paced, his claws tapping against the metal floor. "Even if what you say is true, you're just one man. Retired, no less. You have no leverage here." John's smile returned, faint and dangerous. "You still don't get it, do you? You're not holding me. I'm holding you. Right now, Earth doesn't even know I'm here. But if I don't check in soon, they'll come looking. And when they find out a Zarkonian warship took me, they won't ask questions. They'll send people who make me look like a friendly tour guide." The confidence in his voice was unnerving. The Zarkonians were used to enemies pleading for mercy or bargaining for survival. But this human didn't need to bargain. He spoke as if the outcome was already decided. "You're bluffing," Vrax said, but the uncertainty in his tone betrayed him. "Am I?" John leaned forward slightly, his eyes locking onto Vrax's. "You saw what I did in those memories. That was me holding back. Do you really want to see what happens when I don't?" The tension in the room was palpable. Even Vrax, known for his ruthlessness, seemed at a loss for how to proceed. Every instinct told him this human was dangerous, but pride and protocol demanded he maintain control. "Here's a free piece of advice," John said, his voice dropping to a low, lethal tone. "Let me go. Pretend this never happened. Because if you don't, the only thing your empire will be remembered for is the mistake of underestimating Earth. And trust me, we don't forgive mistakes." The room remained silent, every Zarkonian frozen in place. John leaned back again, his faint smile returning. "Your move, General." Vrax stood motionless, his mind racing as he processed the gravity of the situation. The room, once a place of Zarkonian dominance, now felt oppressive, the walls seeming to close in. The old human sat there, calm as ever, exuding an air of control that no prisoner should have. One of the younger guards finally broke the silence. "General, what if he's right? If we harm him," he didn't finish the sentence, the implications clear to everyone in the room. Vrax clenched his claws, his pride warring with his sense of self-preservation. "We can't simply let him go," he growled. "It would be an admission of weakness." John's smirk widened, and he shook his head slowly. "Weakness isn't letting me go. Weakness is doubling down on a mistake because you're too proud to admit you made one." The words stung, and Vrax's mandibles twitched in frustration. He paced the room, his thoughts spiraling. This human had turned the tables with nothing but words and an unshakable confidence. Every instinct screamed to end him here and now, but the memory of that holographic display, those images of fleets burning and Zarkonians defeated, made his blood run cold. Then came the alarm, a shrill, blaring sound that sent the guards scrambling for their weapons. The ship's AI chimed in, its voice sharp and mechanical. "Unidentified vessel detected on approach. Cloaking field active. Scans indicate advanced Terran technology." Vrax froze. He turned to John, who simply raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's interesting timing," John said, his voice dripping with feigned innocence. "What have you done?" Vrax demanded, stepping closer to him. John sighed, almost as if he pitied the alien. "You brought this on yourself, General. I told you, didn't I? Earth has protocols. When someone like me goes missing, they don't send diplomats." The AI's voice interrupted again. "Vessel has locked weapons on this ship. Communication incoming." The holographic display in the corner of the room flickered to life, revealing the shadowed outline of a Terran stealth ship. A cold, authoritative voice echoed through the room. "Zarkonian vessel, this is Captain Morgan of the ESV Shadowstrike. You are holding one of ours. Release him immediately or face consequences." The tension hit its breaking point. Vrax's claws dug into the edge of the table, his composure unraveling. "This is Zarkonian space. You have no jurisdiction here." The Terran captain's response was swift and uncompromising. "We don't care about your jurisdiction. You have 30 seconds to comply, or we'll assume hostile intent." John chuckled softly, breaking the heavy silence. "You really should listen to them, General. Those ships don't miss, and their weapons hit harder than you can imagine." Vrax's pride flared for a moment, but self-preservation won out. He barked an order to his guards. "Release him. Now!" The restraints on John's wrists clicked open, and he stood, stretching casually as if he hadn't just been a prisoner. He looked at Vrax, his expression almost kind. "Smart choice. For what it's worth, I'll recommend they don't hold a grudge over this misunderstanding." As John walked toward the exit, escorted by 2 nervous guards, he paused and glanced back at Vrax. "One last thing, General. Don't mistake humanity's patience for weakness. It's a lesson others learned the hard way. Let's hope you don't have to." The docking bay doors opened, revealing the sleek, cloaked outline of the Terran stealth ship. John stepped aboard without looking back, disappearing into the shadows. The doors closed behind him, and the Zarkonians stood frozen, the weight of their near-miss sinking in. Moments later, the Shadowstrike vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Zarkonian vessel adrift in silence. Vrax slumped into a chair, his claws shaking. He turned to his crew. "This never happened. Do you understand me? Not a word of this leaves this ship. The officers nodded quickly, eager to erase the encounter from memory. But deep down, Vrax knew the truth. They had underestimated humanity, and it was a mistake they would never forget.